Fellas, let's be honest. The people want a new type, and it's been exactly a decade since the last time we got one. I don't know about you guys, but I'm starving. Now the problem is that we can't agree on what we want. Last time, Fairy seemed so obvious. But now the only types people can think of suck. Sound? What, you want smell and taste type too? Computer type? Cosmic? Embarrassing. Rubber type? No. This simply won't do. What we need is for all the silly little creatures out there to have a type of their own. That's right. Goblin type. Now you may be curious as to what a goblin is defined as. I'll tell you, it's feral, gluttonous, kleptomanic, wiggly-fingered, gaping-mouth, sharp-toothed, pointy-eared, ugly, and or fugly. If a Pokemon exhibits any of these characteristics, we might be looking at a goblin. I also want to distinguish between goblin and potentially similar types. Dark types are all about trickery and foul play, and goblins happen to have their fair share of tricks. Overall, I'll say goblins are more like wild beasts driven by their immediate impulses, and dark types are a little more clever in their villainy. I'm also worried that goblin may compete with dragon for monster-looking Pokemon and with fairy for some of the little magical creatures, but this didn't end up being too much of a problem for me, so let's take a look at the decks, starting with the easiest ones to slap goblin onto. Starting off in Kanto, Drowsy and Hypno. Look at those wiggly little fingers scrounging around for snacks. Goblin. As for Hypno, it's creepy, it's hungry, it's a goblin. Lickitung and Licky Licky. These guys are definitely hungry, and the dex reads that Licky Licky licks anything and anyone that comes near for potential crumbs. Oh yeah, we're just replacing normal with goblin straight up. Munchlax and Snorlax though. These guys, although hungry and slothful, they look kind of like normal plain colored normal types, so I'm saying normal goblin here. Next up, Seaking. Look at that thing. Goblin. Easy. Next up, Pinsir. Are you kidding me? Goblin. In Johto, only one is speaking to me, and that's Snubble and Gramble. Look at that characteristic underbite. That's a goblin. Now for the X-Cloud line, the sound type truthers are going to be mad at me, but that's a goblin. Come on. For Bayonet, it was a bit of a toss-up between the Hoenn Ghosts, but Bayonet's flapping little jaws and his silly little teeth when he casts spells are just telling me goblin. So I'm saying Shuppet is pure ghost, turns goblin as Bayonet. For Glalie, I like the idea of having a choice between types for split evolutions. So when you evolve Snorunt, choose between ghost or goblin. Same goes for Clamperl, except I'm going to give Gorbis Fairy because it's never too late. In the Sinnoh region, I also only have one here, and that's Purugly. When it evolves, that's a goblin. In the Unova region, Basculin. I'm making this exclusive to Red and Blue Striped, since White Stripe gets Basculegion, so choose between Ghost or Goblin. For Darumaka and Darmanitan, that's both Unova and Galar lines. Darumaka is so silly, Darmanitan is so wild, and Darmanitan will trade Goblin out with Zen move. Next up, Trubbish and Garbodor, easy Goblin. Druddigan, look at this gargoyle little creepy creature. Goblin! And I actually have nothing for Kalos or Yoda, so let's go straight to Galar with Meowth Berserker. Now Berserker is actually the reason why this video exists. Look at this Goblin. Thank you, Ian. Now, as for Paldea, I only got Grafaion, so that's going to trade out normal from Goblin when it evolves. This is another certified Ian classic. And that's it for the simple ones. I went by fairy rules here, so I'm only adding the type if there's an empty slot or I'm replacing normal. There are a few other Pokemon who fit the bill but don't have a free type slot though. Let's talk Golem. Now, I figure Rhyhorn's line sort of fills that Kanto rock ground niche just fine, so I'd like to mix it up with Golem. Also, Geodude floats in the air, so I don't know why it's a ground type. Pure rock, and it gets Goblin as Graveler and Golem. Next we have Gligar and Gliscor. These guys have nothing to do with ground, once again, and the best evidence that the Dex provides is that they sometimes cling to cliffs, if that's even ground, Who you kidding? This thing's a goblin. Next up, Sableye. Same deal. Sableye is not a ghost in any way, but a goblin in every way. Next, I want to address the Drapion allegations. Now, he's a tough one, because he already has 2 other types fighting for that secondary slot, but it's got a wild temperament, and it's the Ogre Scorpion Pokemon, so that's telling me Goblin. Same goes for Yanmega, the Ogre Darner Pokemon. And before you say Bug Dragon, Dragonfly, it's not a dragon, not remotely. The Japanese word has nothing to do with dragons, so these guys are goblins. Next up, Grimmsnarl is literally the goblin. You search goblin, you find Grimmsnarl. What must I say? And before I change the topic, I have a few more ones that I think deserve mentioning, and I think they deserve new forms. Starting with Fearow. Now its ugliness strikes me, and I think it's a prime candidate for a goblin evolution. Something like this, a little less draconic, but make it scruffy, wild, and green. Finally, Mankey and Primeape. If it wasn't for Annihilape, I'd make these 2 goblins on the spot, but I think we would need a split evolution to properly make them goblins. Now what does the goblin type do? I did scroll up a bit of a type chart, but it doesn't really matter. I just wanted to complete the triangle with Dragon and Fairy. I also want to talk moves, starting with physical moves. Goblins use their horns, claws, and teeth to rip things apart. They're strong and they're risky. Let's start with Goblin Claw. This is basically a Shadow Claw clone. It's going to be a widespread TM. A lot of non-goblins are going to get it. And some guys like Sniper Drapion are going to really like this one. Next up is Rummage. This is going to be the goblin move, so anyone can use it. Whether it's hands, claws, or your mouth or beak, any goblin can use this attack. I thought that a thief or knockoff effect could be feasible here, but that's more of a dark type thing, so I'll say they have a bug bite effect. Next up, Monster Pummel and Wild Abandon. These are both high power moves. I wanted both because it's just nice to have a choice, and especially with Wild Abandon, I want it for those Reckless and Rockhead Basculins. As for special moves, these are going to be a little less straightforward than physical attackers, because think about it, goblins, they bang pots and pans to make a racket. They imitate more sophisticated magic casters by using bastardized versions of their spells. They don't know how to boost themselves, but their unholy magic can debuff targets. First off is Squeal. This is going to be one of those early game TMs that's also pretty widespread, but it'll be good for technician users. Also have Barbarous Spell. This is going to be the standard special attack. It's going to be available to most goblins and other magic casting Pokemon. Next up, Loathly Conjuration. This will be like the Fire Blast level special move, a little less accurate. Finally, Vile Racket. For anyone seething and crying about Exploud losing Stab Boom Burst, here. And that's it. Yahoo!